Hello guys and welcome to episode 73 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam, and today we are taking a look at a slice of life of a mother, Laura, and her 5-year-old daughter Camille's first week at school in Bonjour's Camille and Laura. And let's get that out of the way. It might be that I slip into the German pronunciation of Laura, which is Laura, because in Austria, if someone is called Laura, you say Laura. So if I do slip into that by accident, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing now, because I just caught myself almost doing it there. But yeah, saying Laura is in like the English pronunciation I haven't done for a while. So if I do slip into Laura, then I'm talking about Laura. And yeah, the game Camille and Laura released on Steam on August 12th, 2025. I'm actually recording this at the end of August, so it's quite a recent release. And yeah, I think it's interesting that as video games have progressed through the years, more and more emphasis has been put on how good a video game's graphics look, how realistic they are, how much they can push the hardware they are on. And that means that a lot of games just sort of blend together. Like they look very photorealistic, they have realistic lighting, they look very good in the most conventional of terms. But when I saw Camille and Laura by Bonjour, I think is how you pronounce their name, and also after reading the reviews, actually an excellent review on a site called So Many Games, make sure you check them out, I'll put the link in the description. I was surprised to see that the graphics for this game, looked like they were drawn by a 5-year-old. And as someone who used to work in a kindergarten with 3 to 6-year-olds every day, I had spent hundreds and hundreds of hours basically drawing pictures like this, or looking at pictures like this, or being given pictures like this as gifts. Like I used to have a drawer at work that kids would, whenever they drew a picture and wanted to give it to me as a present, they would just stick it in my drawer. And at the end of the week, I had to kind of go through them and sort of very unsentimentally just take the ones that looked nice or had some kind of meaning to me, and the rest I had to just put them in the recycling bin, because there were so many drawings, and each of them all very very childish kids that are drawn from 3 to 6. And yeah, this game looks exactly like that. So having seen it and having read the review on So Many Games, I had to give Camille and Laura a go. So what is Camille and Laura? Why does it look like a 5-year-old has drawn it? And should you give the game a go? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. But before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that you can support my podcast on Patreon. If you do, you will gain access to all of my content 24 hours early, and you will unlock the Beat Your Backlog bonus vault, which has been filled up with exclusive podcast episodes only for patrons. Recently, episode 7 just went up, which is me going through my entire physical game collection. And I never really considered myself a physical game collector, but that video took an hour and 20 minutes to make, to go through all of the games. So I do have quite a big physical collection. So if you're interested specifically in like Nintendo Wii games, then go and subscribe at the $2 or $5 tier, and you'll be able to get access to that video. And you can do that by going over to patreon.com/beat your backlog, or click the link in my description. And as always, thank you so much to my Patreon supporters for supporting. So what is Camille and Laura? And the game, it basically takes place over an eventful week in the lives of the two main characters, who are of course Camille and Laura. It is 5-year-old Camille's first day in a new French-speaking school, where unfortunately for her, she doesn't speak any French. Her mother Laura, who is a single mother, has to deal with this new challenge for her daughter, whilst also trying to survive the slog of her everyday life of working, cooking, shopping, and looking after Camille all on her own. And as you might expect from the premise, the story is a touching one about the love between a mother and a daughter, and that even though life can be difficult at times, a parent will do anything for the happiness of their child. And yeah, having become a dad nearly 14 months ago, I can really relate to this feeling throughout the story. And I was obviously very much rooting for Camille, hoping that things would get better for her, as she seems to not only struggle with being a single mother, but also has some of her own issues that she tries to deal with in the game. And yeah, obviously, luckily, I'm not a single father. I'm married and I have my wife. But I do often wonder how single parents survive, because there have been plenty of times in the last 14 months where, you're half asleep, you have this child crying in the middle of the night, and you kind of don't know why they're crying. They just are crying, and you think to yourself, okay, I need to give her now. I need to give my child to my partner, because I just need to sit down for 5 minutes to collect myself and then go back into it. And just some nights, you just maybe don't have the energy to I don't know, put your child to bed. Like how me and my wife do it is that each night we take it in turn. So one night I'll put our daughter to bed, the next night my wife will put her to bed. So that means every second night we have in quotation marks, a night off. That's actually what I'm doing tonight. So this night, as I'm recording, it's 8 p.m. My daughter's asleep in the next room. That's kind of why I've been a bit quieter than I usually am. And my wife's kind of on call now in case she starts crying, so I have the time to do my hobbies, do something that's not being a parent. So I do often wonder, like, how do people do this on their own? Like, how do they survive? Not just like the responsibility and the time that you have to put into being a parent and a single parent, but also the sort of, how do you afford it financially? You know, with one salary, like having a kid isn't cheap at all. And if you're only surviving off of one salary and maybe some kind of benefits from the state, like, it must be very, very hard. So yeah, it was it's also really what drew me to the game, to see this take on a single parent's role in the life of their child and how they deal with it. And I do really think the game does an excellent job of kind of portraying the difficulties of being a single parent. And if you are a parent yourself, it will be a game you'll be very easy to relate to, even obviously if you're not a single parent. But just as any parent, you really feel for Laura and the sort of things that she has to do, and appreciate how everything that she's doing, she wants to do the best for her daughter, which is really nice. And if we go into sort of the story itself, well, it's like I said before, it's a slice of life story. So it's more or less just you're just playing through the daily activities of these two people, and there aren't really any twists or heroes riding in on white horses. It really is just like you are, getting up in the morning, getting Camille ready for school, taking her to school, going to work, picking her up from school, and the cycle sort of continues. And if you are watching on the YouTube, you should hopefully be able to see some gameplay. If I just maximize the screen a little bit as I talk. Sorry for the audio listeners, but this is always a little bit difficult to do on the fly. But because the game is actually a point and click game, which you might see if you're watching the video. But it's one that's been really, really point and click adventure game, I should say. But it's one that's been really stripped back to the simplest ways, and it's very easy to play. Most of the gameplay revolves around you doing these daily activities like cooking breakfast and dinner for Camille, and the puzzles in quotation marks are very, very logical. Well, if you know how to cook, they are. So if we take an example of making toast for Camille in the morning, you basically have to first take the bread, put it in the toaster, wait for it to toast. In the meantime, take a knife out, take the butter out, put the knife into the butter, wait for the toaster cutter to toast, and then put the butter on the toast. So there's butter on the toast. Then take a plate, put the toast on the plate, and then put it on the table. And that's kind of the puzzle, like I said, in quotation marks. And yeah, I do like this approach because I do not typically like the vagueness and leaps in logic that a lot of point and click adventure games have. That, sometimes it's like, okay, you're in a room and somehow you need to turn a light on, and magically, in some weird way and convoluted way, the coffee cup on the table and an item you got 20 minutes ago can be mixed together to somehow turn on the light. So yeah, I really don't like that in point and click adventure games. That's why I tend to avoid them. But yeah, I don't mind it like this. Like, it's very easy. There's no way around it. Like, the puzzles aren't difficult to do. But I do appreciate it that this game is kind of narrative based. Like, the gameplay is there really just to give you something to do. And I guess a point and click adventure game is easier to develop for a solo developer or a developer who's maybe just starting out. But yeah, it's like a means to an end, but it does get quite repetitive. So a lot of the time you are just making food, and you're doing it 2 times a day, right? So you're doing it in the morning and on the evening, and you're doing that over a 5-day period. And there are some other gameplay sections, like you have to go shopping and you have a budget and you're not supposed to go out of your budget, even though the game is a little bit glitched, or that's where it gets a little bit vague, because in the game it says buy snacks or something like that, but it doesn't necessarily define what a snack is. So I ended up spending all of my budget because I didn't know what item I was supposed to buy. If you are planning on playing the game, I think it's ice cream is what it defines as a snack. But it at least broke up the kind of monotonousness of making the food. And I do think it would have been nice to maybe add some more sections like that. But then as I was writing my review and like preparing the notes for the podcast, I was like, I wonder if this is like on purpose. Maybe this is a little bit too like meta as a parent. But it as a parent, especially of a young kid, if like right now I'm actually on paternity leave, so I'm at home all day with my daughter. And a lot of my day is spent just making food for her, because you have to think in the morning she needs, well, basically she eats about every 2 hours. So you're like, every 2 hours you need to have something for her to eat. And a lot of the time it isn't just like, oh well, she had porridge for breakfast, she'll eat porridge again in like a midday meal. Like she's a bit like a hobbit, like she has like 11sies and second breakfast and whatever. Because she won't, because she's like, well, I've already had this is boring. So you have to think of like, well, what hasn't she had over the last couple of days? What is something interesting? What is something with like carbohydrates in it that will fill her up, and isn't just like fruit juices basically, or fruit sugars, because obviously she loves eating fruit, but you're like, after she eats it, she's hungry again in the next half an hour because there's nothing really filling her up. So I was like, maybe this is done on purpose to give you that feeling of being a parent and being like, oh, a lot of your time is really spent like cooking food for your kid. But like I said, I think maybe that's a little bit too meta. But yeah, I do think it would have been fun to have maybe like sections where you're cleaning up Camille's toys after she goes to bed, and as you're doing it, Laura's kind of going through her thoughts from the day, because there are sections where you read a book in the nighttime, and it kind of starts rattling through her sort of anxieties. And because I was also like, yeah, going on beyond the fourth wall of being a parent. Basically, as soon as my daughter goes to bed, the first thing I do is clean up the flat of all of her toys. So I was like, oh, that would have even been more fourth wall breaking if it's like, well, now she's in bed, there is this little mini game of you making sure all of the Lego box, all of the Lego toys go into the Lego box, all of the cuddly toys go into the cuddly toys box, etc. And that would have also broken up the monotony of the food, of making the food. But speaking of going to bed, one thing, actually I think this is probably my favourite thing in the game, is I really like the bedtime stories Laura tells Camille during the game. So every evening when you put Camille to bed, she asks you to read her bedtime, or tell her a bedtime story. And I don't know if these stories are actual sort of, because the game is based in French Canada, in I think it's Montreal, I think. And yeah, the stories are just very, very so I don't know if they are like bedtime stories that are French Canadian ones that everyone in French Canada will know, or if they are stories that were just created for this game. But I do think they are really just like creative stories, just unusual, and how they're told makes it feel like Laura is just making them up on the spot. And I was also like, I think it would be really cool, like if the developer wants some other form of sort of income for the game, maybe they should make like their own little storybook with all of the stories and then illustrate it in the game art style, and put it out as like a an extra, like a product that you can buy for your kids. It's like, here are some really interesting stories, because I do think they're just really fun and imaginative and just different from the typical fairy tales. Like there's one story, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's like the final story that gets told before the game ends, and it's about a platypus, and it's just very, again, like just very creative and different, and the combinations of animals that are in it are just unusual, but it just makes it more entertaining, because again, being a father and reading dozens of books a day to my daughter, a lot of the stories fall into the very similar patterns, and these ones just felt so different and fresh. So yeah, if they ever do that, then I'd definitely buy a copy of the book, because I'd love to be able to read them to my daughter every night. And yeah, so getting back around to the illustrations, if you search for Camille and Laura on Steam, I think the thing that will stand out about the game most is its art style. As I said at the start of the review, it literally looks like it's been hand-drawn by a 5-year-old using pencils and crayons. The characters are drawn in kind of two circular-ish shapes, like very like oblong circles. One big one for the body, one small one for the head. Little dots are used for eyes, a very simple mouth, like lines are used for the mouth. I do like that that Camille has like two little lines under her eyes, like showing bags under her eyes, which adds like a nice little detail. But other features like noses and ears don't really make an appearance on any of the characters, and arms and hands are drawn more like tree branches, where it's just a line with like 4 or 5 lines sticking out of it, like looking like sticks basically, because all of the characters are stick people or stick men. Yeah, it's just an interesting looking game, because you don't see games really that look like this. And then also the backgrounds, they look like if you've ever taken like a crayon and pulled off the like a Crayola crayon and pulled off the piece of paper that wraps around it, and then just put the whole crayon flat on a piece of paper and then just rubbed it all over the paper to like quickly and kind of quickly and sort of not dirtily, but what's the word, like messily cover the paper in as much color as possible. That's what the backgrounds sort of look like. So one half will be done like that in green to signify grass, and the other half will be done in blue to signify the sky. And yeah, it's just an interesting way to portray the story, and I think it kind of is also a very creative way to portray the story, because it's almost like Camille herself is telling the story through her drawing. So like, not necessarily like, I don't think the story is that clever in like it's her perspective of what is happening, because it's very much told from Laura's point of view. But I do think it is clever that it mixes very much in with the theme of like, this is this little girl's first week at school. It's about a mother. It's like again, for like maybe a first time developer or a relatively new developer, it's a great way to make art assets quickly and cheaply. So I think it like ticks a lot of boxes. And yeah, it might come across as a little bit crude, like I think, and it's not the easiest to look at, because like I said, most gamers are looking for photorealism, or they're looking for like really nice pixel art on really nice 3D rendered characters or whatever. But like I said, I think it really fits well to the theme. It's yeah, it's just like perfect for what this game is and what the story it's trying to tell. And another thing I was really surprised at is that because drawing with pencils in this style, like I know from a lot of first-hand experiences, is like getting details across or smaller items across isn't the easiest thing. But I thought it was very, very clear what each item was and what it did just from visually looking at it. So like even like small things like a fork or a knife or a spoon, even though it looks like, you know, a few pixels tall on my Steam Deck, I could still tell what it was. And again, because the puzzles are very much just like basic logical, okay, I need a knife to cut through a cucumber, I knew what I was doing. And I remember playing a lot of the old like LucasArts games and some other point and click adventure games back in the day when I used to be like a trophy hunter. I remember that back then being like, some of these items I have no idea what you're even supposed to be, never mind what they're supposed to do. So I was quite impressed that like it was just very easy to tell what the items were in this art style. And yeah, I think it's, like I said, it ticks a lot of boxes that this game needs and has. So yeah, I like the art style. Also, the sound design, I think it's kind of fine in the game. Like, it's mostly used for atmospheric sounds like footsteps or keys clicking on a keyboard. There is a nice little jingle that plays every time Laura tells Camille that she loves her before Camille goes to school, and I liked it. I like that. Like that. This only and also at the end of the game, I think there's a song as the last story is being told at night. But I like that this little jingle is used at this point whenever Laura tells Camille that she loves her, because it almost feels like that's like the highlight of Laura's day. Like every time, you know, she tells her daughter that she loves her, that kind of like lifts up her spirit, which I think is just like, it's beautiful, because obviously, again, as a parent, every time you tell your kids you love them, you mean it. And yeah, you know, you hope that your kids love you back when, I mean, most of the time they do, but for for me, a 14-month-old, she can't really communicate that yet. So yeah, I really like that. Like, it was just a nice little, like, again, like, just very uplifting part of the game, especially because a lot of the game is kind of dark and a little bit bleaker, at least from Laura's perspective. And like I said, yeah, there is a song at the end of the game that if you tell Camille the final bedtime story, it plays along whilst the story plays out, which I think is nice too. And yeah, I was kind of getting at it before, that this game, it feels like a developer's first or second like commercial project. And I was thinking as I was playing it, it's like, you don't really get many indie games like this anymore. Like, indie has become such like a wide variety of game developers, game teams, game budgets. You know, like, there's so many games that can be considered indie, and they could be just a really small project like this, or they could be a project like Baldur's Gate 3, which some people consider being indie because Larian isn't owned by anyone, right? Even though they've 400 people. And yeah, and I think this game is indie in the best way, because I feel like the narrative is very, very niche. Like, it's a very small contained story that obviously means a lot to the person that has made the game. The art style is very niche, like we've already talked about, that it might not be the prettiest to look at and people might not gel with it. But it just feels like this developer is just sort of like, well, this is the game I want to make, and this is how I want to make it, and this is how I've done it. And I think with a lot of other indie games, they come across as like they are, they're made by a big team, and like they're really good games, but maybe you don't see like the passion from the developers. Whereas I think with a small game like this, with Camille and Laura, like it just seems to be this developer's Bonzoi, I think you pronounce the names. I'm sorry if I'm messing it up, but yeah, it just feels like it's their passion project. It's something that they want to make, and they, like I said, they seem to have made it in like a very much like a realistic way of being like they are a small team, or maybe it's just a single person. I think it's a team because there was quite a few people in the credits, but yeah, they just made it how they want with the art style that they want. They told a story they want. They made the game. It's not like the best game I've ever played or anything like that, but I just appreciate that this is what they wanted to do, and they did it. And I think they really like nailed it, telling this specific story in this way in this game. And I mean, yeah, like I said, it's not perfect. Like there are a couple of visual glitches that I had in the game. Most of them were like layering issues, where if you opened up one menu and then opened up another menu on top of it, some items would be on the wrong layer. And I do think the biggest criticism I have of the game is how small the text appears in the speech bubbles, so characters talking speech bubbles. And I was playing on the Steam Deck, and there it's very like egregious. Like the speech bubbles look massive, but I would say the text takes up maybe 20% of the entire space of the speech bubbles, and it just makes, on the Steam Deck, it just makes it very, very hard to read what's happening. In fact, there are like sections in the game where you are playing as Laura and you have to answer her emails, and you basically just get sent these spam emails over and over again, and each email said something, but honestly, it was so small on the screen that I just couldn't read it. So what I ended up doing was just throwing all of the emails into the trash canister, because I was like, I can't read these, and also because I already I already kind of knew where the story was going to go with this job, and it played out like that. I felt it was quite predictable, that part of the story, what was going to happen to Laura. But yeah, it was very hard to read them. So like, I think like if the developer could go in and like double the size of the font in the game, or triple it, I think that would help a lot, because it was very hard to read. But yeah, like I said, I think these little issues, they sort of play into the indie feeling of the game, and they really add to its charm. Like maybe this game is the first or second commercial game the dev has made, and some of these little bugs slip through QA. Like it really reminds me, years and years ago, I used to do marketing and PR for a developer called Runic Codes. And he was just a one man show. He made these 3 games called Red Colony 2, Red Colony 3, and he was the same thing. He was like, he's just making the games because he wants to make a game, and he wants to make these specific ones, and they were very, let's just say, niche. Like if you look them up on Steam, you'll see why they are so niche. And he was the same. Like he made the game the best to his ability. And then then I would play them. I would go through all of the text and try to correct all of the English text, because Rune's his English wasn't his native language, and then we'd play it and just I'd report bugs and whatever, and it was just like this very small team, and eventually you got to the point where the game would be stable and would run okay, but then you would still have these smaller bugs where you're like, okay, we're just going to ignore them for now because they don't really affect gameplay, and we don't really have the resources to fix them before the game has to go out live. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. Like maybe there were these little issues where they are issues, but they don't break the game or anything. And again, it just gives you that feeling of this is like like an in and out indie game, like as indie as it gets, which I really like, because it really reminds me of my days working for Runic Codes. But yeah, that gets to the question then, should you play Camille and Laura? And yeah, Camille and Laura by Bonzoi is by let me start again. Camille and Laura by Bonzoi is by no means a 10 out of 10 game, but if you are a parent or grew up in a single parent home, I think it is a must play. The emotional tale of a single mother trying to get through her daughter's first week of school is emotional and heartfelt, which any parent can relate to. The art style purposefully looks childish to evoke that feeling of the story being told through the eyes of Camille, the 5-year-old girl of the game, and it works very well with the game's stripped down point and click mechanics. I think it's a great way to spend an evening, as it only takes 2 hours to beat. However, if you aren't a parent, it may not be for you. Yeah, and I really mean that. Like, I think if you are a parent, you should definitely check it out. Like, I think it was less than €10, because I think there is a lot people who our parents can relate to. But if you aren't, I think it might not be one that you. I mean, unless you also want to get in on a very indie feeling game, and or you just enjoy playing short games, or you enjoy playing point and click adventure games. Yeah, I don't know why the game would be for you otherwise. I guess because yeah, it is very the narrative is based on the emotions parents have for their kids, and maybe if you're not a parent, you might not understand it. But like I said, if you grew up in a single parent household, you might relate to it even more because you are basically Camille in this story. So yeah, it's an interesting game. Like you might have noticed I've been doing quite a few short games recently because I've just wound down on Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I'm sort of putting off writing that review because I already have about 9 pages of notes for that game, and now I have to make that into a review. So I think that episode will be a very, very long episode because I have a lot to say about that game. And yeah, in the meantime, I've been trying to play some shorter games because just to get some content out, and also because so this is on the 25th. On the 28th, the new Kirby Forgotten Land Switch 2 expansion thing comes out. So I've not wanted to start anything big because I want to wait for that to start. And yeah, so that's why I've been playing these shorter ones. So yeah, again, like if you do enjoy short games, I would recommend playing it, especially if you are a parent. Anyway, guys, that has been episode 73 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. Are you going to be picking up Camille and Laura? Are you a fan of point-and-click adventure games? If you are, like, a fan, what other games should I play that aren't too, like, crazy with their logic? Because I know there are a lot of really good ones. Like, the obvious one, I guess, is Broken Age by Double Fine, which is more of a modern one. But, yeah, I really don't like that, like I said, the weird logics of adding items together to unlock a key, to unlock a door that then gives you an item that turns into a key or whatever. So if there are more ones where it really is just based on like basic logic of like A plus B equals C, that would be great. So do let me know if you know any games like that. If you're on Spotify, Patreon, or a YouTube listener, you can let me know by commenting on the episode, or if you're listening anywhere else, just let me know on Blue Sky by searching for Beat Your Backlog, or come and join our Discord server. The link is in the description. Also, if you're interested, you can check out my full written review of the game over on Patreon, the link to which will be in the description. And speaking of Patreon, if you've enjoyed this episode and would like to show your support, please consider joining my Patreon at the $2 or $5 tier. If you do, you'll get access to all of my content 24 hours before everyone else, and get access to my Patreon exclusive podcast, Beat Your Bonus. So the last thing, what I want to say is, speaking of like smaller indie titles that feel very indie, if you're in the mood to listen to more content like that, check out episode 72 that just came out about a game called Anne Roger, or check out episode 68, which is about a game called Spilled. Finally, Beat Your Backlog needs your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and or following wherever you're listening, and leaving us a 5-star review, because reviews help new people find us. It all feeds into the algorithm pretty much wherever you're listening on Spotify services, on podcast services. And if you're listening on YouTube, please do like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you in the next one, which will probably be Donkey Kong. So let's see. See ya. Bye.